Welcome to another episode of Gospel Entrepreneurs in partnership with UCB. And I'm thrilled to have my great friend, Gareth Thompson. And he runs a really interesting project called Kingdom Wrestling. But we're going to find out more about that. Sit back, enjoy. I'm thrilled that Gareth is going to join us. Welcome, Gareth.
Welcome, Roy. Thanks for having me on, mate. I'm excited to chat.
So just a little bit about you. Is it Gaz or Gareth? What do you like to be called?
Gaz is fine. Gareth feels like my Sunday name if I've done something wrong.
Okay, so we'll go with Gaz. So just a little bit of background. You live in Bradford. You have a wife, kids. Just give us a bit of who you are. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I actually live in Shipley, just outside of Bradford. It's a beautiful little place. I live there with my wife, Beth, and my two little girls, Isabella and Isla, 4 and 2. And there is another little girl on the way due in February. So there's a lot of women in my life to keep happy. I run Kingdom Wrestling, which is all about using professional wrestling to share the gospel. We have a training school. We go into schools and do talks. We do men's breakfasts, a whole variety of things. And I've been a pro wrestler myself for 12 years. So it's a great expression of talent and skills that God has given me and actually using that for his glory.
I do feel for you. I've only ever been able to produce boys. So you're obviously a much more sensitive type to deal with girls and operate in that way. So I'm thrilled that you got another girl on the way. So exciting and so thrilling. But how did you get into wrestling? Let's start there, because it's not what everybody's into. And it's not real, is it? It's all a bit of a game, isn't it, wrestling?
Oh, here we go. It's gone in with that question. So let's start with how I got into it. And then we'll get into, is it real or fake? Which everybody wants to know. So for me, wrestling was an escape from my childhood. It was the one thing that I could watch on a Friday night with my grandmother that would help me escape the rubbish that was going on at home. My dad left when I was 6. My mum was an alcoholic. I was sexually abused as a young man. And my gran used to take me away on Friday nights and she'd sit with me, and she was a devout Catholic woman. We would pray. She would get me books about bugs and dinosaurs and the human body. And then she'd put on World of Sport Wrestling late at night. And she would tell me, these were real men. These were hardworking laborers, guys like Mick McManus and Kendo Nagasaki and Johnny Sin, and then obviously Big Daddy Giant Haystacks, everyone knows them. But she would sit there in the chair shouting and screaming at the TV for the good guys to win. And then she'd flick it onto the WWF, which she said was all showmanship, and there were pretty boys in the WWF, which was the American wrestling. So we're talking about Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage. We're talking about The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and moving into when I was a young teen, like what they called the Attitude Era, where things were getting really edgy. They were swearing on TV and that kind of stuff, where she was vehemently against. She was like, this isn't family entertainment. But that was wrestling at its peak in the 90s. There were millions tuning into these programs. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the characters, the drama, the storytelling. People often say that wrestling is like soap opera for men. And I can see that it's episodic. You've got the stories playing out week by week. So I would wait to get back, and we'd put the VHS tape in and we'd watch the WWF that she'd recorded the night before for me. So that was wrestling for me. Massive escape. Gave me something to aspire to as a young man. Gave me something to just get lost in. And then as I grew up, I found an opportunity not long after I came to faith to attend a training school in Blackburn. So I would travel a couple of hours every Saturday to this training school. And as soon as I got in the ring and I started running around and hitting the ropes and taking the break falls and feeling the physicality of it, I just fell even deeper in love with the respect for what it takes to do it. This is one thing to watch it on TV and for people to say, oh, it's scripted or fake. There is an element of that. You know who's going to win, but you tried falling onto our ring on these metal beams and pads and the wooden boards, and your body will tell you this is not fake. And, we do it 15, 20 times a match. It's very physically demanding, but there is a massive art and skill to it, doing it right every single time and keeping each other safe and protected. which is why it's good to learn how to do it correctly and not just throw your brothers around the front room like I used to do when I was like 6.
You obviously just threw it in there. You came to faith, which obviously was a pretty big change for your life and the background you were from, and you discovered God's love for you and amazing, and it changed everything around you. Obviously, the wrestling was a part of that, but there were some big changes in your life, and experiencing God's love for you was amazing. Now you're running a project called Kingdom Wrestling. So what is that? Are we all in a fight, or what's the deal here? What's that all about? Because you're entrepreneurial. You've always wanted to do it. You felt God's call on it. Give us a bit of that story as to how you've now got to this place.
Sure. So this actually started when I was working for Christians Against Poverty. So it's an amazing organization. They helped me through debt when I was a young man, and I started working there. I worked there for 7 years, and I ran a debt center and a job club. So I was frontline and in the head office. And whenever I shared my testimony with people about how God had turned my life around, and I was living in a skip at 15, I had a failed marriage, I was in debt myself, and yet I found Jesus, I turned my life around, and now I'm living this crazy life and I'm touring doing wrestling. People's ears just pricked up the second I mentioned the wrestling, and it gave me a great way to share the gospel. And next thing I know, I'm doing client events for CAP. So a debt center in Harrogate, for instance, would put an event on, I would come and speak, and people would give their life to Jesus after hearing my story. And I really felt that the wrestling was the hook. And I was at New Wine Festival, and I saw the Tough Talk guys, and I saw what they were doing, and I thought, this is it. The hook for them was the powerlifting, but actually it's these two Cockney geezers sharing their stories that gives you opportunity for the Holy Spirit to move and to give people the opportunity to respond. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to throw a wrestling event together and put my story smack bang in the middle of it. Because if you control the content, you can do that. So that's where the idea was born, and that was 2018. And we did that for churches that originally I was connected to through CAP. And then word got out, and all these other churches were messaging us saying, can you come and do an event for us?
Are people really interested in wrestling then? They love to come to a wrestling with a Christian. Is that what you were telling me?
I would say wrestling is on the up, particularly in the UK. They've just sold out Wembley Stadium, 93,000 people. They're bringing WrestleMania, which is the biggest wrestling event ever. It's like the Super Bowl of wrestling. They're bringing that to London in a couple of years. Every event that the American companies come over and do is sold out. I can walk down the street, and my wife will tell you this, anywhere we go, I will spot a wrestling T-shirt. Like you spot a football fan, or there's a Bradford City shirt. I can spot a wrestling shirt. We've got 100 plus yards, and the wrestling fans are everywhere. There's a lot of crossover with like heavy metal music, with anything nerdy and geeky. So the rise of Marvel has meant there's all these guys going, oh, I love Iron Man, but I love wrestling. Oh, I love this band, and I love and so it's become cool again to like wrestling. And so there is people out there, families particularly, who want to bring their kids to a fun event. So dads like me who grew up with The Rock and Stone Cold and Hulk Hogan, they want to bring their kids to a wrestling event to see it up close and personal. And the kids, they'll run up the front row. Just this Saturday, I had a kid sat the front row, slap my opponent. He just jumped up and just smacked him. And he's like, you get off, Angel. He's my favorite wrestler. And I'm like, he'd only seen me for the first time in his life, like 20 minutes ago, but he was that invested in the story we were telling that he just jumped in. So wrestling is popular, and it's one of those things that until you do it, you then suddenly realize, hang on, this event we just did in St. Helens, they sold out 170 tickets, refigured the seating with 2 days to go. I did another 20 and they sold out within 2 hours. So there's like, okay, there is definitely an audience for it.
And so you're doing this with CAP. You're passionate about it, but you're still employed in CAP. The entrepreneurial side of you is thinking, I wonder if I could live by this or do this full time.
One of the main things I struggled with was having to travel to train how to do it. So I thought, well, I'm experienced enough now, and I know enough other wrestlers who are local that have got the experience to be able to teach people how to do it. So we partnered with the church in Bradford and said, look, can we put on a wrestling school in your new building where you've got all this space where we can engage people with pro wrestling? And at the same time, that coach relationship gives you 100 opportunities to share your life, to get into the nitty gritty, to be Jesus to these people and for them to see you as a real person. We started that in 2021. And before we knew it, we had a full class of 10 to 15 people every week. We started doing events regularly. And then we started seeing people come to faith. And we were like, oh, what do we do next? Because I'd often come and done an event and gone. So the discipleship and so on was kind of with the church, but now it was with us. So we thought, okay, we've got some people that want to be baptized. Let's do wrestling church. Let's have a baptism pool at the side of the ring. Let's put some worship in, and let's have a wrestling match that can kind of explain why baptism is important. And so we did the resurrection story at Easter, and we had a coffin at ringside, and the good guy got ganged up on. Another good guy came to save him, but turned out he was playing the part of Judas and threw him to the baddies. And then the good guy got put in the coffin, the lid got shut, the bad guy's celebrating. Yeah, I've won. All of a sudden, the lights go off and there's lightning and thunder, and the good guy appears in the ring like out of nowhere, like magic, and then beats up the bad guys. They all scurry off. And we did that, and I then preached on the back of that about how that reflects the story of baptism, that how going into the tomb, going into the water, fresh start, redemption, that then became, okay, we've got a wrestling church. And we had BBC cameras there for the first one, which is incredible that they even featured the baptism and then put that on BBC. And that then became its own thing. So now we've got a wrestling school, touring events, and wrestling church. And I'm like, we need to do something more with this. How can I not do it just in Bradford, but how can I take it to Castleford or take it to London, and let's set some more of these up so that more people can be engaged with the gospel?
So the goal is full-time. You're actually setting up a charity. The entrepreneur in you is like, what's the next steps? People listening, they may have an idea. They may see some fruit on it. You saw that fruit. You've obviously got the wrestling testimony, people coming to faith. It's all looking great. It's then going to be a dream ticket to just launch this and enable it to fly. Was that what happened, Gaz?
No, it's never that simple, is it? It's never that simple. No, to be fair, I would say that, you know, I've honed a lot of skills and talents over my time in many different things. Setting up a charity was one of those things that filled me with absolute dread, because I was like, how do I even do this and do it correctly? I didn't know who to chat to. I had a few people, you know, I'm good friends with John Kirkby. I chewed his ear a little bit. Guys like Carl Beach and Matt Summerfield. And I'm like, how do we go about it? And this name, Roy Crown, kept popping up. And I was like, okay. And I checked out the Gospel Entrepreneurs website and I thought, here we go. This is it. And so I dropped you guys a message and I was like, can we chat? Because I thought, if I'm going to do this, I really want to have those people who can get it, who understand it, who can support it, give that advice. I'm not asking to take the reins off, but what I'm saying is you guys know what you're doing. You've done it with so many other people. And I thought, I think this is it. And obviously that started a incredible relationship. I would call you a friend now, Roy. You're still a mentor as well. And the journey wasn't easy because wrestling doesn't quite fit into a box that the Charity Commission would be like, how is that even charitable? So I had to explain that professional wrestling, although it has the name in the title, is not actually a professional sport because it is scripted entertainment, just with a physical element to it. So once I explained that, and that took however many months back and forth for the charity, since like May to December, there was a lot of back and forth. Eventually, when we got there, they signed off on it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And now the rubber's hit the road because now we've got to get the finance, we've got to build the policies, we've got to make all this good and tight ship and run it well. And I think since December, we've definitely, you know, done a lot of that. Just the fact that I'm sat in a room now with our own brand new 16-foot wrestling ring in a space that just this weekend we saw a church run out of Bibles to give away. And this week we've got 15 kids ages between 8 and 16 coming to learn how to wrestle. We've got multiple adult classes happening. We're about to start a podcast. It's like it's all kicking off. We've just stayed diligent. We've pushed ahead. We've jumped over all the obstacles. And I think if anyone's an entrepreneur and wants to do something for the gospel, you are going to come under some scrutiny and some attack, and you are going to have some hoops to jump through because the enemy doesn't want it to happen. But here we are pushing ahead, and I'm saying, no, you haven't stopped me yet. God's got it. Let's just keep going, and God will honor that.
And it's kind of really interesting, is it? Because you've set these classes, but kids really want to do it. You've got waiting lists on these kids that want to come and get a lesson on being thrown around a wrestling ring. It's kind of unique in the sense of it's wrestling and it's church, but you've called it kingdom wrestling because it's bigger than that. You could put on an outreach or an event and just do it. It's a hook to get people in. And then is it between the rounds you tell your story? What would an evening look like?
So when we go to a church, if they invite us to come and do an event, we will always say, first off, what have you got to back it up with? So when we finish with the event and we move on, what's next for these people? Because we know people will come, we know people will respond, and we want the church to be prepared for that. What we will say is that we want the church leader or someone from the church to be visible in the event. So we like to have some fun with that.
You've just put off 75% of the church leaders that are listening to this that are kind of thinking, so if I get you to come and do a wrestling event, I'm going to be in the ring.
Well, when we say in the ring, I don't mean getting physical with the boys. Although I have had a bishop slap a wrestler. I have had another church leader with his son do a double clothesline and take a wrestler down. That does happen. We've even had a 65-year-old female vicar work a match. It happens. But most of the time, it will be they're hosting the event. They're kind of like the MC. They're introducing people. But we'll have a bad guy wrestler come out and start to pick a fight with the church leader. And the church leader will be like, look, I'm not a wrestler. That's not my job. But my mate Gaz is. And I come out as the good guy and we set up a fight for the main event so that people stick around. Then we'll have a couple of matches and we've got wrestlers all over the country. We've got a bunch of them that aren't Christian and we've got some that are Christian and we've got some that are well on their way. We baptized 4 wrestlers last year on their faith journey. And that keeps growing because people want to be a part of it, which is incredible. So we'll have these wrestlers, men and women. So we have some female wrestlers as well. We have tag team matches. And that kind of spaces the event out. And then in the middle, I will then share my testimony before we then go into a break, which gives us time to minister, to hand out packs, to pray with people.
Okay.
And that's like the middle of the show. And then we'll have another fight or two. And then I'll be the main event fight that people stick around for at the end because we've kind of got them invested at the beginning. And then again in the middle, once they hear my story. And then at the end, they really want to see the good guy overcome and do that. And then often we'll have the church leader help the good guy win at the end. So just this past weekend, we had the church leader in a referee shirt under his hoodie. And so the referee got knocked out and then I hit my finishing move and the church leader slid in with his referee shirt on and counted the 3, which then made the church leader look $1 million and everyone were cheering for him. And I'm like, great, he's going to be at church tomorrow morning. Those people are going to come in and they're going to go, that church leader, cool, you know? And so that's what we do. That'll be a typical outreach event. We call them takeovers because it's like, we're going to come and take over the church for the night. And it just gives that like energy of, oh, this is cool, wrestling in a church. We see people respond all the time to that, which is incredible. The Holy Spirit just, as I'm sharing my story, you can hear a pin drop. And then there's just people in tears, and in the interval, just this overwhelming ability to people just be like, I want to say yes to Jesus, and then they get to cheer at the end and have fun with the kids, and yeah, it's just great.
So it's a really evangelistic event that you put on, and at the same time, you're running quote unquote the business side of it, where people sign up for the classes, they pay money for that. So you've got the kind of the trading bit, the charity bit, all operating under this same ministry. So somebody listening to this, they probably got a bit of a dream when they were a similar age and then maybe never fulfilled it. You are now fulfilling it, but it's probably 20 odd years that it's been living in you, isn't it?
For me, there is often a pinch yourself moment when I suddenly realized that for some people, just becoming a professional wrestler and having their first match is like living the dream. But I'm now 12 years in, and not only am I winning championships, and I still tour as a wrestler. So I still go to other shows. I'm still performing in different places. But like, I'm living that dream. But then also, like, my wife and my kids come to my events and they get to cheer their dad on. And that's really precious. That's really special for them to have a dad that's present, but also a dad that they think's like a superhero. And I'm like, oh, my little heart. And my daughters have got their own little wrestling figures and a little wrestling ring at home, and they love it. And I'm like, this is incredible. But then also to have God's calling just being kind of fleshed out and coming to life, and God just blessing it and being like, look, I gave you wrestling when you were a kid to get you through your stuff. You've now got a story to tell, and I'm going to use wrestling to do that, because what was your escape is now your release. And I'm just going to release it and release it and release it. And the Holy Spirit's going to do some incredible stuff. So I don't think anyone can sit there and think that a dream is ever dead when we live in the kingdom, because it's not. God can resurrect it the same way as he resurrected Jesus. Like, there is nothing stopping your dream from coming true. Yes, there's some work to do. I often say there's this time I was thinking about God. Sometimes we sit there and we want to dig a hole, but God's like, I've given you the shovel, just dig it yourself. And we're praying for the hole, but God's like, I've given you the tools. My whole life and my career has built me to a point where I know what it's like to speak to people on a level they understand. I know the community that I'm reaching is primarily working class. That's where I'm from. God's given me the skills. He got me into wrestling. I've trained. He's given me the skills. There's just all this other stuff around the ideas that I have, and just wanting to be a storyteller and create these characters. I was doing that on video games when I was a kid, but now I'm doing it with these stories that we tell at Wrestling Church. And so God's just like, I've given you the tools, guys. Just get on and do it. And we've had to do the work, but here we are. And that's what it takes.
It's building a cultural context, isn't it? And it's creating the interest. And it's not that you need to redeem wrestling. You're just taking a tool and use it for the gospel, which is really what we need to do with so many things, and rather than seeing it negatively.
Yeah, I think if there's anything we can use that brings people into contact with Christians and the gospel, there are many different ways of doing that. It might be a paddleboard club. It might be a skate park. It might be wherever. And we do it through youth groups, and we do it through knit and natter. And there's all these different ways of doing it. I'm just doing the same thing, but with a skill and a hobby and an interest that attracts people like me. And people like me, unfortunately, aren't walking into church on a Sunday. So how else are we going to come into contact with them? I would rather them come here and spend 8 months in my training school around me and my guys and girls, and being like, Gaz is just a real fella who loves Jesus, and you see it in my ups and you see it in my downs. And that's relational evangelism. You can't get any better than that, because that's the stuff that sets you up for life.
How long can you keep being thrown about in the ring? I mean, are you still going to be doing this in 30 years from now when you're 67 or whatever it is?
Well, the great thing about being in the position I'm in is that if my body can't do it after 10 years, I've got other people who I'm training up now who can do it.
Great.
And I've got other people we're going to come into contact with who can do it. The cycle will continue. I will then move into the background. I will move into the production, the storytelling. I'll still be booking the shows. I'll have my puppeteer hands over everything that's kind of going on and making sure the gospel's preached. I can preach the gospel till I'm on my deathbed. I might not be able to physically be able to wrestle, but I can still be a part of the show, be a part of the thing. So I've got plans for that. When it comes for my time to retire, I'll do a retirement tour. I'll put my boots in the ring and I'll walk away. But I'll be in the back on the headset telling the sound guy, come on, look, here's music, all that kind of stuff.
It's amazing where you've come from, because it's just a bit different, isn't it? Kingdom Wrestling, Wrestling Church is a bit different. And I think it's great what you're doing. We're coming into land. Somebody listening to this, how do they connect with you? But also just anything you would say that's got that passion or that idea to bring it to reality, which is where you are now. Give a final thought.
So I'd say if you're looking for us and you want to connect with us, our website's got everything on there, kingdomwrestling.org. We're on pretty much every social media channel you can think of. Just search for Kingdom Wrestling UK. You'll find us real easy, and you can connect with us through there. If you're sat there and you're thinking, I really want to make my dream a reality, I really want to make God's calling a reality, you need to seek out guys like Roy. You need to seek out gospel entrepreneurs. You need to find those around you who've been there and done that. There's so many people who would be so happy to have a conversation with you and give you some pointers and help you in the right direction. But I know Roy's got a fantastic team. I'm a testament to that, and they will help you on the way. So get in touch with Roy and gospel entrepreneurs, and I'm sure they can help you make that a reality.
Yes, I didn't pay you for that, but thanks for that. And it's been a real privilege and honor to serve you to get to this point. And that's what we love to see, that those things become a reality and put you in touch with the right people that can make it work. Because there are people in the kingdom that love to do that, to make you all that God wants you to be. Thanks for this time. It's been great to have you on the show, Gaz. You're a star. And I look forward to seeing where Kingdom Wrestling, Kingdom Church continues to grow and develop. God bless you. Thanks for joining us.
Bless you, Roy. Thanks, mate.
If you enjoyed that chat with Gaz and Kingdom Wrestling, he's given you the link. Go and see what they're up to. This has been a series in partnership with UCB and Gospel Entrepreneurs. We're so thrilled that you're listening. If you like what you heard, do put a like out there. Do put some comments. But once again, thank you for listening. God bless you.